Okay, let me just start by saying that this is not going to be an easy video. I'm already feeling anxiety through the roof and there's tons of noise outside. As per usual, when you want to talk about something very serious and not have a distraction, we're just gonna keep it moving.
I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings, but now I shine with your reflection on me.
I decided not to have a beat face today because number one, I kind of really don't feel like doing it, and number two, I felt like it went with the nature of the video because this is a very vulnerable topic that I will be discussing today. As you can see in the title, this is something that I never thought that I would be sitting here talking about, let alone sharing, but I think that it's important to express because you never know who you might help or reach, and even if you don't reach anyone, it's for you, and this definitely is for me and for us to just be free from this experience because I'm so sick of being triggered by certain things that I see that have to do with reminding me of all of this that just happened that I'm about to get into right now. Okay, so I honestly don't even know where to start. I guess we'll just have to go with, let's just drop the bomb. I am single and there is no significant other in my life. Okay, I just repeated myself. But anyway, I am single. I am a single mom, and I did have a breakup with the last person that everyone has saw me with on social media. Basically, what happened is we had a heart-to-heart. We were having arguments. The arguments led up to a final discussion on where we are in the relationship, if we're going to move forward or if we're not going to move forward. I was very honest about something, and it was revealed to me through spirit what was going on with him. I addressed it to him and he chose not to be honest. Mind you, I was completely transparent with my side, but he chose not to be. Now, he knows that I am a reader, conscious, spiritual, and I have foresight and I have backsight. I have clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance, and a whole bunch of other things, which is why that is what allowed me to utilize my gifts over the years. Him knowing that, to still lie to me about things that were revealed to me about him is completely disrespectful, considering I was completely transparent with him. Really wasn't sure if I was going to add this in this video, but you know what? Spirit gave me the cosign to do so, especially since my ex has decided to lie on me numerous times to my sister, which is really fucked up. I would just like to say that I never cheated on him, and even though I did reveal to him that I am in love with someone that he knew, I never acted on it, and I always tried to transmute it away, and I couldn't. But I know that me and that person is meant to be, and I hope that we find each other again. I know that he's out there, and I know that we will find each other. It's just a matter of when, and I don't want to entertain anybody else because I know that he is my person. So grateful that I have at least spent one day getting to know him when he did my ex-boyfriend's tattoo. Anyway, as far as my ex-boyfriend is concerned, actually it wasn't a full day getting to know him, it was just like a few hours. But anyway, as far as my ex-boyfriend is concerned, he actually did cheat on me with his family, and it was happening the whole time that we were together, and he could not be honest about that. That's all. Also like to mention, first of all, okay, so I'm filming this way later in the day because I wanted to make sure I got this in the video, and I filled in my eyebrows. Yeah, they were kind of fuzzy in the rest of the video because they're going in again after shaving them. Anyway, the reason why I mentioned this clip is because if anyone is wondering if he is going to be present or if we are speaking to each other, we are not speaking. Unfortunately, that is all on him. I tried to reach out months ago, literally like as soon as I found out that I was pregnant, via email. I did not want to tell him via email because that's news that you should say over the phone or in person. Since we were no longer in person, I emailed him saying, hey, I have some big news. It's not drama related, like everything's all good. Let me know if you have a number I can reach you. He never replied. Come to find out, he was talking to my sister about a whole bunch of things about me, lying on me to her. She believed him. She was talking back with him. There was no loyalty there from either one of them. Gave her my email address after I specifically told him that I wanted nothing to do with her. Ignored me, gave her my email address, and still hasn't contacted. So by the time she gave me his number, I felt like, you know what? He clearly has to know what I wanted to tell him since we were trying to conceive, and I don't think it's up to me to reach out when he didn't even give me a number to reach him. He clearly does not want to be reached. So I have him blocked, along with quite a lot of other people, for our peace and our sanity. So the breakup happened. I told him please not to take me to my sister's house because I no longer wanted to be around her after it was revealed a bunch of things about her. And so he took me to my mom's house like I asked him. He took me to my mom's house. I went to my mom's house and she's on the phone with her husband. They're having an argument about me being there, and you know, I get it. I'm grown. I should have my life together. But unfortunately, life just gets thrown at you. So what happened? We get into it briefly. She gave me a lecture on it's time to fix my life, which I get. Okay, sure. But I didn't know that the turn of events was going to happen that way. And then, you know, I asked her again, please don't take me to my sister's house. I don't want to be there. Can I just stay here? She felt like I sprung it on her last minute when I definitely told her the day before that I was coming, but she decides to tell her husband last minute, or she said that she didn't tell him last minute, but I guess he felt the way about it last minute. I don't know what the truth is because everyone seems to lie. However, once I got there, it was, I'm taking you to your sister's house. So I get to my sister's house, a place that I did not want to be. I told 2 people not to drop me off there, and they decided to drop me off there anyway. So I get to my sister's house, and you know, I'm trying to keep the peace. You know, obviously she let me in to her home, so I'm trying to be respectful. I cleaned, I cooked for her. She didn't want to eat the food, fine. I guess she wasn't hungry, that's okay. So, you know, some days were going by and I started to feel like I was in a prison. The energy was just like, whoa, I gotta get out of here. I have to get out of here. I have to get out of here. So she starts telling me that my ex-boyfriend tells her something about me that was completely untrue. And I'm like, why are you even listening to him, let alone texting with him? What is that about? That's no loyalty at all, considering you are my sister. And instead of her showing me the text message, she decides to hide her phone. So I snatched the phone from her hand because I want to see what they're talking about. It's only right. And she comes after me to take the phone back. Okay, fine. So you want to keep your phone? Now I definitely can't even trust you and I'm in your space. Couldn't trust you before and now I really can't trust you. So she decides to, you know, close her room door and just seclude herself. I try to seclude myself. And so I try to listen to music because that's the only thing that can calm me down. She comes back out. I'm not even sure if this is a day later or not, but she comes back out and she pretty much tells me to lower the noise. Music is never noise. And considering that I thought she loved music, but I guess that was truly false too, no, I'm not gonna turn it down. So I did turn it down for a little bit because I'm like, let me not be petty, this is her home. And ironically, what I was watching was the Brandy and Monica special of their verses. And I was, you know, watching them, you know, kiki and chat it up. So I turned that down. So interesting because I don't know what happened from point A to point B, but next thing I know, I am on the floor cleaning up water. So pretty much what happened from what the alters told me is that I got triggered from feeling very controlled, which I often do feel from my sister. Pretty much had an emotional episode and there was a switch that happened. So first Jewel came out and went and grabbed a pitcher of water and poured it on the TV that we were watching. And then Julie came out, one of our littles who's 5, started getting a whole bunch of paper towels to clean it up. And that's when I came back to being on the floor, cleaning up the water while leaping like a frog. So yeah, there's that. She gets on the phone with our mom and starts telling her, I don't know what's going on with her. She looks like she's going crazy. Meanwhile, she knows I have alters, they both do, but for some reason they seem to forget in the most important moments. So they're on the phone with each other telling me to calm down, making me feel like I'm going crazy, which I knew that I wasn't. I was just making sure, or we were just trying to make sure that I was emotionally okay. Push comes to shove, and the alters always know what to do in a situation that is of dire need. So I guess that was their way of getting us the fuck out of there, because it definitely worked. She pretty much kicked me out. It was like 3 or 4 in the morning. She tells me, I'm gonna get a car for you. Mind you, before this, let's backtrack. Days prior, she comes into the living room where I was sleeping and tells me, oh, we're gonna go to Florida. I think you need some time to get away. I need some time to get away as well, so we're gonna go to Florida. I don't want to go to Florida, but thank you for the offer. No, we're going to go to Florida because it's what you need, and that's that. You're not going to tell me where we're going and what we're doing because you want to do that. No, it's not where I want to be. I know where I want to be, and I'm going to get there. So the alters made that happen. Fast forward to this wretched night. She claims that she had a driver for me. She calls her friend or ex-boyfriend or whoever he is to her, pulls up in his car, tells me I'll take you wherever you want to go. First instinct was take me to Penn Station 34th Street, because this was in New York, by the way. I had already left Maryland from the ex, dropping me off to New York. And so, anyway, I'm at Penn Station 34th Street. She hands me $40. Literally didn't want any energy from her. So I took the $40 and gave it to a homeless man and was like, here, this is for you, and walked into Penn Station. Literally, I get into Penn Station and I realized that no trains are working. Of course she would drop me off in the middle of this like non-working station. Her being there for all those months prior to me just getting back like days ago, she should know the different times of the train, and decides to still drop me off there anyway. Even though I did ask to be dropped there, she could have said, oh, actually the trains are not working right now. But I guess in that moment she just felt like fend for yourself, right? Fine, there was a psychotic break that happened. However, where's the compassion towards why did it happen? Anyway, I get down there, they tell me no trains are working, which was kind of perfect because what was working was an alternative train. Gosh, I forgot what they're called, but like another type of train that gets you to an airport. And I was like, how do I get to an airport? I forgot if it was LaGuardia or JFK. I really don't even remember at this point. But so I get on the train to get to the airport. Luckily, I did have some funds to do that, which was a miracle. And so I get to the airport and I'm sitting at the airport for literally 2 hours waiting for someone to come to the cashier place for where the tickets are purchased. I get up to the person after literally sitting on my suitcase for 2 hours. I get to the area where you purchase your ticket and I'm like, please let me just get a ticket to California, Los Angeles, because obviously I missed California and it always felt like home to me more than any other place. I was like, that's clearly where I need to go. I don't know why, but I need to go there. So I ask her if there's anything she could do because I give her my card, and for some reason it had came up declined at first, so I don't even remember what happened. All of a sudden she makes some magic move and boom, I have a ticket. I'm like, yes, thank you God. So I get on the plane, I'm like, okay, everything's gonna turn up, everything's gonna turn around, there's people out there that I know, I'm just gonna figure out how I can call them, even though, mind you, I had no phone because my ex-boyfriend took my phone. While we were together, he bought me a new phone because I had bullshit phones before, or like no service on another phone. I had one phone that had no service and then one phone that was like a shitty phone. So he bought me a phone while we were together. Of course, upon the breakup, he takes the phone back, and I wasn't even able to really pretty much delete every single thing off of it. I think I deleted most of it, but not all of it by the time he was like, okay, I'm taking the phone now. So anyway, fast forward, I'm in LA, I have no phone, I'm trying to figure out who I can call, what I can do. So I pretty much start asking people around, like the bus drivers and people like that, like, okay, where can I get to this place or that place? Like different landmarks that I remember to go to, because I just felt like, okay, Spirit is clearly leading this experience, so let me just go to some landmarks that might make me feel comfortable or at ease, because I don't know what I'm gonna do or where I'm gonna stay. So I end up getting to one landmark that always made me feel comfort. At this point, I need to use the bathroom. Mind you, before that, as I'm on the bus, this guy offers me like 2 sandwiches and something to drink, which was so helpful because I was so hungry. Okay, so anyway, I get to this landmark, I'm like trying to calm down, and then I start bawl crying because I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is life? What is life right now? So then I start walking, like, okay, let me just peek, just just pee, just release your emotion and just relax. And so I get to this other block, and this guy's just sitting there, and he's like, do you have a phone charger? I'm like, no, I don't even have a phone. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. He was like, what's going on? And I was like, I just really gotta use the bathroom. He was like, hey, I'll take you to this park. So he takes me to this park. There wasn't a bathroom there, but there's another woman there, kind of just sitting there with her dog. We start talking. She starts telling me her life story, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, so I'm really not alone in this. You know, sometimes we could feel alone even though we're never alone. And I'm like, okay, cool. So she's like, oh, actually the bathrooms are over in that park. I'm like, okay, thank you. So I finally get to the next park, use the bathroom, I get on a swing, and I start swinging, and I'm like, okay, life has to get better. Like, it just has to get better. It has to, like, it has to. Okay, so at this point, I remember that I had an aunt that lived in a certain area of California. So I was like, okay, if I could just get to that area, I can ask someone to use their phone, and I can try to get on Instagram and hit her up and be like, hey, I'm in your area. So as I'm swinging, I get off, obviously, of the swing and ask this guy who's by his car, like, hey, what bus gets to so-and-so area? So he tells me the bus, I get on the bus, I get to the area, and I realize, oh, there's some hotels around here. Let me see if my card will work miracles again. Well, I get to like 2 different hotels. No, miracles were done for the day. So I'm like, okay, fine. So, well, at the moment I wasn't like, okay, fine. At the moment I was like, you know, like, so I sit down, I start like crying again, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, where am I gonna stay? How am I gonna contact her? So I'm like, okay, wait, let me use someone's phone, right? That was the first plan. The hotels wasn't the first plan. The plan was to call my aunt. So I see this guy sitting down. He gives me I ask him if I could use his phone. He gives me his phone. And so I'm like, I get on Instagram, I hit her up, and I totally forgot that she moved to Florida. So I was like, oh my God. Please don't tell me that I was actually supposed to go to Florida. Then I was like, no, wait, no, I was not supposed to go to Florida. I don't want to be there. This is fine. Like, next plan B, C, whatever. You just got to keep moving, keep figuring it out. So I'm like, okay, so wait, who else do I know lives here? So then I hit up 2 more people, 2 more friends, so-called friends, and we'll get to that in a second, that I know lives, you know, near or wherever, the area. So one of them responds, and I'm like, oh my gosh, hey. And then the other one responds, I'm like, oh my gosh, hey. So then I'm like, okay, well, which house should I go to? So then I start like using my instincts, and I'm like, okay, I'll go here because this one I've known like longer, and maybe we'll have like a better rapport, right? Just for like in this situation, because I didn't want to go to the other one's house because like we didn't know each other that well, and for me to just be like, hey, I'm here, like it didn't feel as comfortable to do at the moment. So he ends up taking me to my friend's house that I knew longer. We get there, and before we get upstairs, he's like, you know, you can just stay with me, right? And I'm like, so my brain goes, okay, this random stranger is offering me to stay in his house, and even though I don't know him, I feel like this would be a fresh start. I don't know why I had that thought process, but I was just like, instead of staying with someone who I've burdened before to stay with them, let me just, I don't know, not that I want to burden somebody new, but let me at least stay with someone new so I'm not burdening anyone that I know. Pretty much can't be like, oh, she's in this situation again. I wanted to just feel like, you know, I had it under control. Well, no. So she looked happy to see me, but for some reason I was just like, I kind of don't want to feel like, you know, I'm about to just be in the same situation again because I've stayed with her before. So I leave, I go to the guy's house, everything's cool. You know, I stayed there for about 2 to 3 weeks. I think it was 3 weeks. I ended up spending Christmas there. Now you know the timeline kind of when all this went down. I spent Christmas there of 2020, and I'm like, okay, so once again, I'm spending Christmas alone because he actually had to work. So I was in his house mostly by myself. That was another really good thing about it. Like the best thing about staying with him was like, for those 3 weeks, I was literally by myself every day because he had to work. It was kind of like I was able to decompress and reflect and just think. And upon thinking, so many revelations came in about so many different things. And all I did was like cry for 3 weeks straight. But sometimes you have to do that. So anyway, life got real. I woke the fuck up, and pretty much it was like time to go. And he even was like, okay, it's kind of time for you to go. Where are you gonna go? And I was like, okay, well, I'll hit up one of those girls that I told you that I could stay with. And he was like, okay, great. He was like, you know, not that I want to kick you out, but like my family is not cool with this. He lived alone, but like his family, pretty much, it was his family's spot, and he was staying there, and they were like, okay, that's it. it's pretty much time to go, and I hit up the one who said she has a bigger space, because I'm like, you know what, she literally said she has a bigger space. Even though I don't know her as like close as the other one, she does have more space, so it would feel like probably less of a burden. Maybe I should go there. I go to her house. Mind you, I'm not saying names just so I'm not like throwing people out there, but I will give descriptions at least. This was someone young who had a son. So I get to her house, everything seems cool, and we're like, we're trying to like get to know each other again. I could feel her anxiety, she could feel my anxiety. We start talking about a bunch of spiritual things. Fast forward, it ends up going into, she's like, you know what, just stay here for 3 months. Like, you're pregnant. Oh, mind you, I found out I was pregnant at her house. So I told her I was like suspecting that I was pregnant, because for 2 months straight I had not taken a pregnancy test, but I didn't want to, because in the past I've taken pregnancy tests and I've had miscarriages, and I didn't want to deal with none of that again. So I was like, I can't have any more letdowns in this area, because this is something that I'm very, very, very serious about having come to reality in my life one day, but I can't deal with another letdown concerning this. So I'm not even gonna try to think about this, because I felt like I went from over obsessing about it to the point where I didn't want to think about it anymore. Because when you're on your trying to conceive journey, you kind of get obsessive a little bit, and that's where I got to. So wait, rewind. My ex-boyfriend and I were planning to have children or a child, and we were actively trying to conceive. So that's why I was like, okay, let me not even think about it. Unfortunately, I didn't know a breakup was gonna happen right around the same time as this. But anyway, fast forward, she's like, you know what, I have a pregnancy test, why don't you just take it? And I'm like, fine. My period hasn't come for 2 months, maybe I am pregnant. And lo and behold, on New Year's Eve, I took a test and found out that I was pregnant. So overjoyed. Hi, Juliana, by the way. I have not even said who I was. Sorry. Okay, so anyway, I take the test. So at this point, the new year is about to hit like that night, and I'm so in bliss. I'm like, wow, it's about to be a new year, and I know for sure that I'm pregnant. Like, this is awesome. I can't wait to make an appointment to the doctor. That was back when I was still gonna do the whole doctor thing, but like, yeah, no, that's done. I swear, like, this is probably the most important topic I will ever talk about, and there's so much noise. There's like buses, cars, planes. Anyway, we're just gonna keep going. Even noise outside of the door. Okay. Okay, so her dude comes over that night. We all spend New Year's together. Ended up spending New Year's with her dude, and all these cats that she had, right? She had like adult cats, and then they had kittens. I was supposed to take 3 of the kittens, but it turned out to be where it didn't work out like that. Lo and behold, it was gonna turn out that I had to leave there too, and I'll get to that in like 2.5 seconds. She leaves, like once the ball dropped and we said New Year's, like Happy New Year's to each other, she leaves with him and they go like to go have a moment somewhere. And so I decide to obviously stay there. I'm not gonna go to a party or anything. I wasn't in the mood to. I did get invited to a party from a friend, but I was like not in the mood for it. I was like, I'm newly pregnant. I'm so on a different wave right now. Not to say that like I'm not gonna party ever in my life, but at that moment it just wasn't where my head was. So I was like, I'm just gonna spend it with the cats and my baby, So I decide to, and also one of the kittens was like so hooked on me in that moment. It was so cute. Anyway, fast forward, the cats turned out to be evil, okay? Let's drop the ball on that. They really did. It was bad. And it turned out that she had a bunch of evil in her house. Now, I wasn't trying to come in there and disturb her peace or anything like that. All I did was come in and reveal what was already there. So unfortunately, she couldn't really handle that because, it was too much for her at the moment and she had enough going on. And so it started to build a barrier with us and become very stressful to communicate. Let's just say the darkness in there became very heavy, and we did multiple measures to get it out, but at that level of where it was at, there needed to be extra measures taken. However, if there was a little bit more patience on her end, it could have happened. But unfortunately, that wasn't even, believe it or not, what drew the final like brick on the situation. What did it was one day I'm sitting down, something happened with me that was a bit what she wasn't used to seeing. I tried to explain to her how I couldn't explain it at the moment, but just give it time and I'm sure you'll be able to know what's going on. And so she didn't want to give me that patience. She felt like, well, you're in my house and I should know everything about you. And I'm like, yeah, granted you should, but this situation right here is like, I'm sorry, I can't, just give me some time. Well, she didn't want to give me time. I woke up the next day to her telling me that I pretty much have to go. So 3 months turned into what, like 2 weeks? Very fast. She knew I was pregnant, by the way. She knew I had nowhere to go. She claimed that she thought that I had some place to go because I had another friend to go to. So maybe we'll give the benefit of the doubt in that regard. However, when I did leave there, I did not go to that other friend's house because I didn't want to burden her, and I felt bad. I swear to you, the noise outside is on a level past annoying. Anyway, so okay. I didn't want to burden my other friend, because like I chose this friend first, and then like I was in this situation before, so I was like, let me just try to like just not. So I ended up sitting at a bus stop for hours trying to figure out what I should do, because in those situations you kind of just feel like I'd rather just be to myself so no one can talk shit about me being in this situation again, because they don't realize that you get put in these situations over and over again because either there's lessons that you need to learn that you haven't learned before, or it's a test, or there's different people you have to meet during these situations that you're meant to help. God will put you in these situations to sometimes be there for someone else who needs your presence also. So anyway, I'm sitting at the bus stop and this guy comes up to me and he's like, hey, you know, you look cool, whatever. He's like, do you want to get something to eat? And I'm like, listen, you know, I can't turn down someone trying to offer me something to eat. Like, it happened before, and it always happens when I'm hungry as shit. So yes, thank you. I would love something to eat. We go walk to his office. I dropped my bags down. I was a little skeptic because I was like, who else works there? Like, is my stuff okay? He's like, yeah, it's totally fine. We go get food. Food was so good. I'm eating it at his office, and he's like, you can totally sleep here tonight. I'm like, really? Again, some random stranger offering me their space. But you know what? It's not like I'm a stranger to that myself with staying with random people, and sometimes it's a hit or miss. So I was like, let me just stay here. Well, I end up staying there. Come to soon very fast realize that this person is an addict. Now listen, I'm not judging the fact that he is or was an addict, because I was an addict, and I will get to that in a different video as well. But at this moment, I am pregnant, and I definitely was not about to touch any type of substance of any sort for any reason, because I was very focused on having a sober pregnancy. He knew that this was my thought process and kept trying to offer me what he was taking, and I was like, I'm sorry, but no. So I was like, you know what? I know this is a test because it's literally being put right here. And I'm like, no. And I'm so glad that I passed because I didn't take any of it. It was time to leave there because I did not feel safe. I was like, this is not the environment that I need to be in. I'm gonna leave. I ironically had a job interview that day, did the job interview, and then, because it was like a Zoom job interview, because you know, COVID and all that. So I was like, I'm done. Once this interview is done, thank you so much for letting me use your laptop and sleeping on the couch in the back office, but I'm out. I leave from there. I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me try to let my pride down and go back to this girl's house and see if maybe she will let me back in, if we could work something out. Like, I don't know, like, let me just try. And then at the moment, to be very truthfully honest with you guys, I had realized that feelings for her came back. And so I was like, you know what? Let me also write a letter to her and be like, hey, this is what I feel, and like maybe this added to our barrier. I don't know. And so, mind you, the only reason why I was even allowing myself to write this letter is because she told me with her own words that she was also having feelings for me that she was trying to figure out, but she didn't really know how to process them, and so she needed time. So that's the only reason why. I was not like forcing myself. I get to the door, I'm knocking, I hear that she's in there, she doesn't open. I'm like, okay, on some movie shit, let me write a letter and slip it under her door. I've never done this for anybody, mind you, so this was so vulnerable to do. I write a letter, I slip it under the door, And I sit there and I sit there and I sit there. It was probably for like hours. I don't know if it was like 1 or 2 hours, but I know it wasn't one. I was sitting there for a while. People were walking by like, oh my God, she's still here. Like, I was sitting there. And so that was embarrassing. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe this is, you know, God telling me that's it. Like, that's it. I write another letter pretty much saying like, okay, well, you know, here's how you've made me feel in this situation as well. Like, this is a two-way street. I'm just gonna leave you alone. That was that. That was the last time I was at her space, at her house, anything. I leave there, I go back to that bus stop that I sat at, and I was like, okay, I have to pee again. I go into a McDonald's, I pee, tried to get some food, couldn't get food. The security guy hears this and offers me to get me some food. Once again, there is some hope left in humanity. So I'm like, thank you so much. Like, this is like the third person who's offered me food in the moment that I really, really need it. Thank you so much. I get the food, I go back to the bus stop, I eat this food. As I'm eating, some guy pulls up and he's like, hey, do you want to sit in my car? Because like, you seem cold. And I was cold. So I was like, sure. So I eat the food in his car, and I have my suitcase out of the car and one leg out of the car just to make sure he didn't like drive off with me. And so I'm like, okay, I'm kind of okay. And so I'm eating and he's like, hey, you know, like, until you figure out what you're gonna do, I have to do DoorDash tonight. So like, do you want to ride with me? And I'm like, sure. Like, it's an experience. So we start riding around. He does the DoorDash, and then like, he's like, well, I want to drop you off somewhere where you could at least, you know, sleep and you'll be okay. So I'm like, oh, is he about to offer me a hotel? How sweet. No, he meant a safe space to sleep outside. And so I'm like, okay, not that you owe me anything, not that you have to get me a hotel. You don't know me from Adam. I get it, you don't have to do anything. However, considering I rode in the car with you for hours while you did DoorDash and pretty much worked with you or like gave you company on a graveyard shift, I would think maybe you would I don't know, energy is energy, you know, like just reciprocate something other than that. I don't know. If I'm wrong, tell me. Like, okay, I don't know. So he hands me a $20 bill and he's like, hey, this is for you to get some food for tomorrow. I'm like, thank you so much, I appreciate it. I'm like freaking out because I'm like, wow, I'm pregnant and I'm about to sleep outside. Great. I've been homeless before, but I can luckily say that I was sleeping in my car, and that was for 4 months. But this was about like, shit just got real. I was about to sleep outside while pregnant. Like, that's a different story. And kudos to everyone in life who has slept outside for a lot of years by themselves, or maybe even with a partner. But I like, special kudos if you're by yourself and you're doing it and you're pregnant, like, for real. Because let me tell you, this night was something I would never forget. He dropped me off to this area where there's like, it's kind of like a parking lot, but there's like, it's obviously empty. It's really late, it's graveyard hours. And so I'm like, okay. I have my suitcase, so I'm gonna sleep on my suitcase. It was really cold and misty outside. I don't know why, but all of a sudden, like, this night was the most misty, foggy night ever. But it had condensation in the mist, so it's pretty much water floating in the air with cold. And so I had barely nothing on because I hardly had anything with me. I had to grab what I could. So I'm like in the fetal position on my suitcase, and I try to go to sleep. I woke up probably like every 30 minutes to an hour, I swear, just checking my surroundings, any noise that I heard, making sure. At one point I woke up and saw like this white Jeep or like white like SUV, and I was like, how long were they there? Like, how long were they watching? Because as soon as I opened my eyes and woke up, they drove off. And I was like, okay. And it was like, it just felt like dreamlike. So then I went back to sleep. Mind you, okay, time's going by and my clothes are getting wetter and wetter because the mist and me are like now becoming one. So at 6 a.m. I was like, I can't take this shit anymore. I'm fucking freezing, I'm cold, like, that's it. So I get up and I start uncontrollably shaking. Like, I try to go walk and find a bathroom. Oh, and I had to pee. Of course, I'm pregnant, and you know, you have to pee every 5 seconds. And so I was like, I'm hungry. I have to pee. My bladder's about to burst, universe a bit. And I'm like, what's going on? So not even like a second into me walking, trying to find something, I start uncontrollably shaking. Like it was like crazy, and I'm like, this is like, am I about to have a freeze attack here? So I finally calmed down, thank God, and I go and I see this like deli place that's open. Of course, they couldn't let me pee, so then I go walk and see this guy sitting in his car who seemed like he was like a patrol person. I tell him I'm pregnant and I have to pee. He's like, oh, there's a Ralph's all the way up there. Mind you, before even getting to this other parking lot, because none of the places were open in this other one, so I had to go walk past so many blocks to get to this other one, freezing. Finally get to it. The guy in his car who's a patrol tells me, oh, Ralph's is all the way up there. It's like a supermarket in California. So in my mind, I'm like, would have been really nice if you offered me a ride up there, considering I'm pregnant and I really have to pee. But you cannot assume that, you know, people have to do anything for you. You gotta just keep it moving. So I walked, hauled ass to however yonder the Ralph's was, finally pee, changed my socks, and I was like, okay, I can breathe. I luckily had the $20 from the guy from the night before, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to that deli that I first saw because that breakfast smelled so good, and I'm gonna get an actual breakfast because maybe if I eat big, this will last the rest of the day because I don't know where my next meal is coming. So I get the food, I go walk to a park that's nearby, I sit at this park, and I'm finally eating by myself and just enjoying some sort of like peace for like 2 seconds, right? This guy comes up to me and he's like, hey, are you homeless? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, I'm gonna come back and give you some money. I was like, you really don't have to do that. He was like, no, I really want to come back and give you some money. I'm like, wow, thank you. I didn't think it was gonna come back. He came back and gave me money. So I'm like, wow, he gave me $40. So I was like, wow, that's really kind of you, thank you. And then he goes, my wife passed away, Bendito. He goes, my wife passed away and I have some clothes of hers. Do you need some clothes? And I was like, wow, thank you so much. And he was like, you can check my car. Mind you, at this moment, like 5 minutes before he comes to me, the friend that I didn't want to stay with because I didn't want to burden her because I stood with her before ends up texting me like, are you okay? I was like, okay, this is God telling me to go to her house. And I was like, no, I'm not. I slept outside last night. Like, she was like, oh my God, come over. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, thank you so much. So I was like, listen, I feel like I'm coming down with something. Can you just like maybe, I don't know. She's like, I'm gonna send you a Lyft right now or Uber. I'm like, thank you so much. I was like, I actually just got money from someone so I can pay you back. She was like, oh, okay, cool. In my mind, I'm like, okay, she knows I'm in this situation. She still wants to be paid back. But anyway, like, hey, I get it, right? So I'm like, hey, can you take me to that other parking lot because like I'm getting an Uber picked up for me there for my friend. I'm gonna stay with someone. Everything's looking up. He's like, okay, cool, great. So he takes me to the other parking lot. I Ubered to her house from her paying for the Uber. I was so grateful to walk in that door because even though like I felt like I didn't want to burden her, I didn't want to be there to make her feel like it's happening all over again, it felt good to see someone that I knew, you know, for quite some years and just, you know, give her a hug, take a shower, and just decompress. She made me some tea, she made me some food, and we just started to like chill out. Now, mind you, she also had 2 cats. And I'll give a description for her instead of a name. She had 2 cats and she's a tattoo artist, a young person. Well, not young, but around my age group, just like the other one. So I pretty much was like, okay, I'm gonna just try to like, you know, think about what I'm gonna do and like figure it out. And she was like, you know what? Why don't you just don't worry about it? Just stay here. You're pregnant. Like, you know, at first when I told her I was pregnant, she was kind of with the whole, are you serious? Like, didn't seem happy for me. And I was like, are you happy for me or not? Like, what is this about? And she's like, no, I don't want you to be in a situation. And I was just like, well, I'm happy about this. And so then she started to turn around and things started to change. But then I noticed that when I was talking about my pregnancy, she would kind of go quiet and kind of get sad. So I was like, okay, I see what's happening. She wants children and she's sad that she's not there yet. And then she explained, well, she didn't say it in those words, but she did mention like, being with someone she thought she was gonna have a future with, and then it didn't work out. And then like, so basically, yes, she wanted children. So I was like, oh, this might be difficult because, you know, the place I was at before, at least she had a child, so there wasn't this weirdness about this. But now I'm with someone who wants a child and sees me pregnant, and so like I saw that jealousy was starting to grow, and I was like, oh no. And so I tried to transmute it as much as I could. So then turns out her cats were evil as well. I'm not a cat hater, by the way. I've had a cat before. I actually had 3 of them before, and the last one that I had, I was able to keep for longer than the other 2, because the first one I had to give away because it attacked me, and the second one was stolen from me. So the third one, I was like, okay, 3rd time's a charm. I'm gonna make this work. Nobody's taking this from me, and hopefully this cat doesn't attack me. Well, it turned out the cat did try to attack me because the cat had trauma from the past caregivers, and also we had a past life connection. It was just very deep. So anyway, unfortunately I had to give my 3rd cat away to a new caregiver because it just wasn't working out either. And so anyway, I'm not a cat hater, but I know when there's evil in a cat. Granted, those are her babies, so she didn't want to believe me at first, but then, you know, a series of events happened and she was like, oh shit, I think you might be right. I'm like, yeah. So she's like, what should I do? I'm like, I'm not gonna tell you what to do in this situation, like, that you should, that's on you. So I started to notice, like, we started to have weird tension because I just started to feel like, you know, some weird things were going on with her, like that she would do to me. So I'm a very like straightforward person. Instead of holding it in and like hiding what I feel and acting fake with you, I'm gonna tell you what I'm feeling to clear the air. Well, I mentioned some things to her and I guess she didn't like it, or I kind of just asked her or like told her what I felt like was happening, and instead of her being like honest and like having awareness or acceptance or anything like that, she kind of just was like one of those people who didn't really want to see herself or like, I don't know, yeah, like face anything. Like everything just has to be great, and everything's not always great. Yeah, so she pretty much threatened me. And I was like, are you serious right now? And she was like, well, you brought me there. I'm like, I brought you there? I brought you into threatening me? Like, okay, no. No. So she tells me I have to go after, mind you, telling me don't worry about it. Like, you can stay pretty much as long as you need to. And then it was like, okay, well, now I'm going to give you a time limit. And now it's like, okay, time limit is done. Can you leave tomorrow? So I'm like, wow. So I was trying to find shelters to go to and wasn't having any luck, you know, because COVID. It was like, what am I going to do? Mind you, I had a doctor's appointment that next day, and that was the first ultrasound that I was gonna have, and like I was so excited and nervous and everything, and I was like, wow. And after that amazing moment, I'm now gonna have to leave and figure it out. Gotcha. So at that point, I didn't know who to call, what to do, and then I was like, there is a 3rd person that I could call, but I don't want to call this person because, again, I stayed with them before, and I don't want them to feel like, oh, she's back, she's a burden. So I was like, I don't know what I should do. I don't know. So I leave the doctor, I go get some food because I still had some money to eat. And mind you, this friend that now the second one that I'm on, that I'm talking about, did give me a bunch of clothes and a purse and like shoes and stuff, and that was very sweet of them. You know, I'll give them that as well. But it had a bunch of cat hair on it, and unfortunately my allergies started to flare up again from the cats, even though I cleared it with my past cat. But with her cats, it felt like they were literally trying to purposely attack me, and so that's what was happening. So I was like, I can't even take these clothes because there's cat hair, but I will do it because I don't want to be rude, because you don't want to, you know, deny what's being offered to you, especially when the person is trying to help. So I was like, okay, well, you know, I'll put them aside, I'll leave them there, I'll go to the doctor and I'll eat, and then I'll figure out what I'm gonna do. So as I'm eating, once again, like the alignment of all of this is so interesting to me. As I'm eating, I realized I got an email because, okay, the night before I emailed the person that I was still like, the 3rd person that I was like, I don't know if I should go. Well, days before that, I emailed them and didn't hear anything. Actually, it wasn't the night before, it was days before. As I'm eating, fast forward, like this next day, from knowing that I had to leave, she tells me, I see an email from her, and she's like, I can't believe I didn't see your email. What's going on? And here's my number. So because I had asked for her number. So I tell her, I'm like, oh my God, here's the situation. I'm so sorry to call you like this. Like, hey, I'm back. I'm in Cali. And she's like, oh my gosh, yeah. And she's like, so to give a description, this one was older, has a son, and was living with her mom at the time. She had situations of being, homeless and staying in a bunch of hotels. And so now she finally had a place again, and this time her and her mom were living together. So she didn't want to just be like, yeah, you can come, because she had her mom there, but she was like, I don't want you in the street. But she was like, okay, at the least I could give you to the weekend. Let's figure it out, right? So I go back to the other friend's house, I grab all my stuff, I leave, I drop her key back because she had gave me the key because she wasn't gonna be there. So I leave the key and I'm like, okay, and that was the last time I saw her and was at her space. So I get to the third friend's house. I get there and I'm talking to her and the mom, and she invites her cousin over, and everything's cool. It seemed like a really good time, and it was just wow, okay, cool, maybe things are gonna be okay. The next day, the mom ends up telling me, listen, you know what, you're pregnant, I don't want you worrying and stressing, stay here for a couple of months, you'll be okay. And I'm like, what, are you sure? She's like, yeah, no problem. I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, thank you. So I'm like, okay, wow, awesome, right? So I had an appointment coming up again, and I was like, I don't know if I want to go to it though, because the last time I was at this hospital, I felt completely uncomfortable by the treatment there and the energy there, and I was just like, I don't like this. So this is when I started thinking I'm definitely going with my first initial plan before pregnancy of having a home water birth, but I need a home first. So how is this going to happen? And so I was like, let me not try to just overthink. God is going to make a way, because this is what I want, and God knows that I deserve this. And I'm not trying to sound entitled when I say that, but God knows your heart. God knows what you've gone through and knows what you deserve and what you do not. And I knew within my heart of hearts that I did deserve this. It was just a matter of how am I going to obtain it. So I was like, okay, I at least get to stay here and think about what I'm gonna do and figure it out. Because this particular friend was into healthy eating and a healthy lifestyle and herbs and all that stuff, she was pretty much telling me different things that I should get, for the pregnancy. And I was like, okay, well, this is good, this is great. So, I ended up getting a bunch of groceries. At this point, my food stamps had kicked in. Yes, that's the real of it. And so I was like, okay, I can get me some stuff and really figure it out. And so I was like, okay, so I'm gonna be here for a little bit. I'm gonna have food. I'm gonna be able to cook. Everything's gonna be kind of okay. And so it was a bit tight. At first I was sleeping in the room with my friend, in her bed with her, and then things just started to feel I don't know. It just started to feel like I should not sleep in there with her. And so, energetically, I started to feel extremely drained. And some people are energy vampires, and that is a thing. You can research it on Google. And I was like, I am with child. I am bringing life. I need all the energy for us. I can't be drained like this, so I'm gonna sleep in the living room. Her mom had days when she worked and she wasn't in the house, so even though she slept in the living room, I was able to have the living room to myself when she was out. So I decided to sleep in the living room when her mom wasn't there, and then her mom started to be there less and less. At first I thought it was because of me, but it was because she was, having fun doing what she was doing. So I was like, okay, all right, cool. This is cool. This is kind of good. We get separate spaces, and yeah. So luckily she did not have a cat. She had no pets. So I was like, okay, this might work. And also, not for nothing, but besides the fact of the cats being evil in both of those places beforehand, when you're pregnant, you're not really supposed to be smelling cat litter. That's actually not good for you. So that was another thing. Fast forward, I was like, okay, cool, everything's gonna be alright. Well, I start expressing different things because me and her known each other for a while too, and we had grown this, dynamic where we can be very real with each other, very honest. And I used to read for her, I used to give her readings. And she was one of the people that was very open to a lot of things that I would say, and she knew that it was coming from a good place. And so we got into some heart-to-hearts about, different things in her life and different things in my life. And for some reason, there was like this barrier that was creating again, and instead of like holding my tongue and being fake, I was like, I'm gonna express what I think is going on here to clear the air. Well, you know, I expressed some things, and I guess they were too direct and too honest, and she thought they were rude considering I'm staying in her space. You know, people love to throw that at you. If you're staying in their space, you have to be very humble. I was being humble, I was just being direct. And not everyone can handle that, I realize, unfortunately. And they think that you're being like rude or like there's no love behind what you're saying, or like you're being disrespectful, but that's not it. Like, you really have to have discernment on where the person is coming from, especially if they're doing their best to explain it. And so I did, and we got into these like off and on tiffs every other day. Lo and behold, it was one night that I said, you know, something like, what did I say? Oh, I literally said that she was playing dumb, because she was. I'm sorry, she was. And so she got offended by that, goes and calls her mom. All of a sudden, I have to, her mom comes back the next day and is like, okay, you have to leave. Now I get it. Okay, I know a lot of you are probably gonna be like, okay, you can't say that to someone you're staying with. But do we really have to walk on eggshells and not express ourselves because someone has opened their door to you? Like, if I opens my door to anyone, I am not going to just make them feel like they can't talk to me and say what they feel. That is a form of control. You're like dangling over them what they can and cannot do. I don't know, like, it's hard to describe it. Like, I don't know. So her space started to feel like a prison too. And it was like, it was crazy. And so all of a sudden, it goes from, you can stay here for months, to, oh, the landlord saw you and wants you out. And I knew that that was a lie. So I'm like, okay. Mind you, her and the daughter and my friend, well, yeah, no, not anymore, but like, told me two different stories. So I knew that they were lying. If you are gonna try to tell someone something and you want someone to co-sign with you, at least have your stories match up, because you're definitely gonna like throw yourself under the bus if your stories don't match up. So I knew what it was, and I was like, okay, you know, here's my mouth getting me in trouble, or my honesty getting me in trouble. Like, you know, I'm not trying to be full of myself when I say this at all, but I'm like, I know that I'm not only the problem. Okay, maybe I could have said it different, but I know that there's another problem here, and I know that there's other issues going on here that I clearly notice, and because I'm bringing it to their attention, it's a problem. Like, for instance, being drained energetically, that was one. Having things put in my food to, I don't know for what, I don't know if it was to poison me or what, but yeah, I'm not even gonna tell you what was being put in my food, but things were being put in my food. And like, I'm pregnant. You think I'm not gonna defend myself when I see you're putting things in my food that shouldn't be in the food? Like, so to have some discretion, I'm not gonna tell you what, but yeah, no, that's not okay, and that's close to being evil. And you expect me not to tell you what I see and what I notice and what's also being revealed. Not only am I physically seeing it with proof, but I'm also like feeling it with proof, and I'm also getting it revealed through spirit. So like, that's triple. But like, I'm you know, and it's crazy because her knowing that I'm a reader, once again, someone else knowing that I am a reader, like, trying to hide what they're doing, that is one of the most disrespectful things you can do to someone. If you know that they see right through you and you're still trying to hide, it's like, are you trying to fuck with their intelligence or like fuck with their gifts? Like, you just don't do that. Anyway, so I knew that she couldn't wait for me to leave, and I knew that I couldn't wait to leave. So I was just like, you know what? I need to figure this out. And so I tried to, you know, pray about it. No, I didn't try. I did. I prayed about it. I asked God to lead the way on where I needed to go next and what to do, because at this point I had no one else to call, and there was nothing else I could do. I got a free phone at this point from the social services office. You know, I had it for like maybe like a month or two at this point now, or maybe like a month. And so, but I still didn't have my old phone, obviously, and my old contacts, or any way to get to my old contacts to see who else I could call. So like, this was it. I had no way of getting online and no way of like nothing. And so I didn't even know who to reach out to at this point. Like, nothing came to mind. And I was just like, okay, so am I supposed to go back to the street again? But because I had slept in the street before, and granted, if I wasn't pregnant, I probably would have done that. You know, I probably would have just been like, that's my life for a little bit for right now. But being pregnant, I wasn't gonna allow myself to do that. I'm sorry. No, it didn't feel like it was safe for me. Who knows what could have happened to me that night, and I didn't want to feel like that again. So I was like, okay, you know what? I have to figure something out, but I don't know what. So her mom kept saying, I'll give you to this day, I'll give you to this day, but like the landlords are getting on me. And I knew that that was a lie, and I was just like, okay, fine. Tried to work something out, thought that it was going to work out, ended up not working out. As I'm trying to figure out what was gonna happen, I wake up one day to the cops at the door, and she's like, I tried to tell her to leave multiple times and she didn't want to leave. I'm like, whoa. It was literally just the day after we had set for me to leave, and she didn't even let me wake up. I wrote a note to her and left it in the kitchen explaining why I was still there and how I was sorry, and I thanked her for her space and hospitality, and how I promised I was going to figure something out by this day. Before the day could even really start, she claimed she never went into the kitchen and never read the letter. Meanwhile, I heard her go into the kitchen when I was in and out of sleep, but she claimed she never looked at it, and all of a sudden the cops are there. So they're like, you know what you have to do, right? I'm like, yes. Luckily, my instinct told me to downsize my stuff the night before, and that's what I did. So I left so much stuff there at her house, and pretty much left with like one little bag that I could leave with. I leave, and they're like, you can go to this shelter, you can go to that shelter, and I was like, okay. And so I was like, what should I do? And I was like, you know what? I'm done with LA. Like, I'm done. 3 people kicked me out of their homes knowing I was pregnant. Like, do you have a heart doing that? So I was like, I don't even want to be here. Not to say that this makes the whole place this way, but I had enough situations, you know, in the city to know that I wanted a fresh start. So I was like, where should I go? Well, the first place that I wanted to move to in California was actually San Francisco. So I was like, you know what? I rerouted myself. It was supposed to be San Francisco first 4 years ago. It ended up being LA. Let me go to San Francisco. Let me just try it out. So at this point, I'm in this mania type of mode. Didn't really know it was because of another thing that I'll get to in a second. And so I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, yes, I'm like riding high with all this optimism. And I'm like, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna get to San Francisco, and you know, like everything's gonna just be okay. I know everything is gonna just fly into place. I like to say fly into place instead of fall into place, because like we should be flying, not falling. Okay, I'm like, okay, I have stamps. What can I do? I have cash assistance. What can I do? And so I pretty much researched that you can take your cash assistance out at a supermarket and you can have money from it. And I'm like, oh, great. So let me get my bus ticket from my cash assistant on my card. So I go to a supermarket that was designated for that. I'm not going to stay in the supermarket because I don't want a bunch of people going to try to do this. I mean, if you know, you know. And it's not illegal, by the way. So I go take the bus and the train to the supermarket, and I get off of the train and I see this guy, and he's like, hey, do you know how to... I forgot what he even asked me, and I answered the question, and then he found out that I was going to the supermarket and was like, oh, can I walk with you? And at that moment, I really didn't even want to be around anyone, but I was just like, sure, fine, thank you, okay. So he walked with me, he starts talking about his life, which was cool, you know, and then he's like, oh, you're having a baby, wow, and so yeah, I'm like, yeah, and so anyway, he tells me his name, and his name ends up being my ex-boyfriend's name, and I'm like, great, like, this is what I need to think about right now. And so I go in there, I get my cash, I leave out, he walks me back to the train, and then we part ways, and it just felt really interesting. He said I reminded him of his ex-girlfriend, and I was just like, wow, what do you know? And so, like, yeah. So I get back to the train, go to the bus station. I was trying to look for Greyhound, and Greyhound wasn't working, so I had to do Amtrak. So I'm like, okay, so because I didn't have a card with the money on it, they weren't accepting cash, so I had to go to a CVS to get a card to put cash on. Ended up getting the wrong card, got food, had to go back to the CVS. It was just like a huge like maze labyrinth of an experience, and I was just like, oh my god, I cannot miss this train, like I just cannot. And so I finally get back to the train right in time, and I'm like, okay, everything's gonna be great, everything's gonna be great. Well, it was connecting to another Greyhound bus at a different station like a few hours later. So I was like, okay, cool. I get to that bus, everything's gonna be great, everything's gonna be great. I'm like traveling through the graveyard hours. Great. I get to San Francisco, I'm like, wow, I'm actually here. Like, I'm here. Cool. So it's like 6 a.m. once again. And I'm like, okay, what do I do now? Of course, the first thing I have to do is pee. Had to go pee. So I go to this like area that looked very futuristic. I was like, what is this? Like, this is kind of cool. That felt like exciting. Like, first experience there. I go pee in this futuristic looking place. I leave there and I'm like, okay, what should I do? And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to see the Golden Gate Bridge. Like, I've seen it in movies, I've seen it in TV shows, I've seen it, like, this is iconic. I was like, this is the first thing I have to do. Like, I have to. So it turns into an entire day of me trying to get to this freaking bridge. And I say it this way because it was so stressful. It was like the most craziest experience ever trying to get to it. None of the bus drivers seemed to have known how to get there or what bus went there, because they said that the buses, like, everything was changed around because of COVID, of course. And so I'm like, well, I'm gonna figure this out if it's like the last thing I do. By the time I get there, the trip started, I want to say from like, okay, I arrived like 5, 6-ish, let's just say 6-ish. From 6 a.m. to like 5 p.m. is how long it took me to get to this bridge. I have chills saying it right now. Like, my hair is standing up. It took like basically like 12 hours to get to this bridge. I finally get to the bridge and I'm like, okay, I'm here. Like, yes. And I start walking on the bridge and I'm seeing a whole bunch of people, like with people, with friends, with family, with significant others. And then it hits me. In 2.5 seconds, all my excitement crashes. And I'm like, I'm literally alone. I don't know anyone here. This is the first time I have moved to a city where I know absolutely no one. I usually at least know one person or a few people somewhere. I knew no one in this city. I had no place to go. I did not think that through upon my impulsive trip to get there, and was just like, oh, fine, everything's gonna be okay. And the more I keep thinking about this, and the more I keep seeing everyone smile and laugh, it was like everything started to move in slow motion. And everyone's having the time of their life, it looked like. We don't know what's on the inside, but you know, as innocent bystanders, we're always assuming, right? It looked like everyone was having the best time of their life, and here I was having the absolute worst time of my life. I was like, I'm the most alone I've ever been in my life. I'm pregnant, and I'm in a new place where I know no one. So then I start thinking, and the thoughts start getting darker and darker and darker and darker, and I'm like, no one knows I'm here. No one really cares about me. If something were to happen to me, no one would know. And I literally am alone. And I was like, why am I even still here? Like, my life has been nothing but struggle and trauma and bullshit. Like, what is the point to even continue? What is the point to continue? Like, what is the point? I was like, I should just fucking end it. Like, it should end here. This is where it ends. This has to be where it ends. I think this is the story of my life, and this is probably where it ends. And I was like, how am I gonna raise, like, what kind of mom am I gonna be if I can't even provide for my child? Like, how am I going to feel like I don't want to put them through this? And then I was like, but that's selfish. You can't think that way. So it was like, do it, don't do it, do it, do it, do it, don't do it, do it, don't do it. And so I go to, before I even got onto the bridge, I had a moment of like crying at like happiness of being there, but also sadness. But then getting on the bridge, the tears came back. So anyway, I tried to wipe them, and I don't know if someone heard me crying in the bathroom or what, but this cop comes up to me from way down yonder of the bridge. Like, it looked like he like crossed the bridge to get to me. It was so weird, I don't know. He comes in this little, like, the singular car where only one person fits in, and he's like, hey, everything all right? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, so someone called us in and said you didn't look so good. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, so I'm sorry, but can I have your ID? And I'm like, are you about to arrest me? And he's like, usually in this situation I would. I don't know if you know, but the Golden Gate Bridge has a high suicide rate. And I was like, oh, you don't say. Because little does he know, that's exactly where my head was. He's like, so yeah, a lot of people jump off of this bridge, and I'm sorry, but you don't look like you're having the best day, so I'm gonna have to ask you to get off the bridge. Instead of arresting you, I'm just gonna ask you to kindly get off the bridge. And I'm like, I really wanted to walk across this bridge. This was very symbolic for me, a whole new lease on life, you know, a whole new thing. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm trying to find a spot to jump, you know, like, that's it. He was like, why are you here? And I was like, well, I'm looking to meet someone. Like, you know, I'm waiting for someone here, because I wanted to let him know, like, you know, it was a lie, but I wanted to tell him, like, it's a white lie, but it was gonna get me to maybe stay on the bridge and maybe succeed what I'm trying to do. But clearly God had another plan for me, and that's not what I was supposed to do. He was like, okay, well, maybe you can meet them at the bottom over there, because you can't be on the bridge anymore. I'm sorry, I have to ask you to go. So I was like, okay, this is better than getting arrested. So let me just, you know, comply. And so let me just get off of this bridge. And so I get off the bridge. It's extremely embarrassing, because at this point everyone's staring at me, and I'm like, it could have been any of you that called him, and none of you are going to be honest and say it was me, and I hope you're okay, and let me give you a hug, or here's some tissue, or nothing. You know, people just stare and poke fun and laugh, because it did look like some of them were laughing, and I was just like, great, like that's great, wonderful. So at this point, the sun's going down, like in 2.5 seconds. I don't even know, I must have dissociated into a thought of like despair or something, because I swear to you, it was daytime, and then I'm done talking to the cop, and it's like dark, and I'm like, how is this even possible? I'm going, you know, in circles, like at the bottom part of the bridge, because I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? Where am I gonna go? Like excitement is done. Like, what am I gonna do? And so I try to call different shelters, and none of them were working out. None of them were able to have anyone there, or answering the phone, or anything like that, because, you know. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to do. So I start crying in the bathroom, and I'm like, okay, wait, no, pull yourself together. So I go and I see this guy who works for the bridge, and I'm like, hey, can you assist me with trying to find a place to stay? Because, like, I don't, and, you know, not that I'm trying to stay with you, please don't think that, but like, do you know any shelters or anything like that? Like, what can I do? And so, because I was literally about to start knocking on doors locally and be like, hey, can I stay here? And I've never got to that point, but like, it was about to get there, because I was like, you know, at that point, thank God that I was snapped out of that thought process, because I was like, I actually really do want to live. I do really want to be a mom, and I want to be here for my baby, and I want to be the best mom ever, and I want life to turn around, because I know that it can, and I know that I'm not done, and there's so much more to do. And so I'm like, this is gonna make me follow my dreams wholeheartedly, like I've never done before, because there's no time to bullshit anymore. Like, this is it. Like, this is a whole new chapter. And so I was like, you know what? No, we're gonna figure this out. And so, of course, all of a sudden, cops come into the bathroom, and I'm like, what did he? Am I getting arrested? Like, I can't deal with this again. Like, this, at this point, this is the third time I've had to see the cops. Like, I'm over it. And so they're like, hey, I hear you're having some trouble finding a place to stay. Let's try to get you somewhere. I'm like, oh, they're here to help. Okay. And so they start calling places. They're having the same luck I did, 0. And so they're like, you know what? After some time, after asking me questions, after seeing if I was like not a complete lunatic, you know, hope that wasn't offensive, but like just making sure that I was sane, they were like, okay, we're gonna put you in a hotel for the night, and then I think you should check yourself into a psych ward the next day. And I was like, fair enough. And you know what? I really appreciate what you were doing. Like, you didn't have to get me a hotel, and that is so sweet of you. Thank you so much. I get to sleep in a bed tonight. Oh my goodness. And I get to take a shower, and I get to be warm. Thank you. Like, it's the little things. And so they take me to this hotel. Granted, it wasn't the best, but who gives a shit, right? So I stay. It was wonderful for the night to just decompress. I leave the next day, and I go straight to the hospital, because I'm like, you know what? I'm not about to have any type of thought process try to come back, because you know what? Demons lurk around you and whisper in your ear and try to pull you to the darkest part of yourself, so you give into it. And I was not about to let that happen again from being alone. So I was like, I'm gonna go somewhere where there's a bunch of people and I can get some help, because I'm not having this happen. And so I go to the trauma section of the hospital and I'm like, hey, I'm here to check myself into a 72-hour stay. And they're like, oh, you go to this place, you go to that place, go to that place. So I go in, they evaluate me and they check, you know, everything with me, and then they come to the realization that I am more sane than I thought. Thank God. And they're like, you don't have to stay for 72 hours here, but what we are gonna do is we're gonna find you a place that you can stay that's a little more suited for you. I cannot say enough how amazing San Francisco is with their resources. Never ever in my life, any city that I have moved to has resources like this. And I'm not saying I love it here because of the resources, because aside from the resources, mind you, I'm going through one of the darkest times in my life with the most exciting new thing coming to me, not thing in that way, but new experience coming to me. But it still feels beautiful to just look around and feel the vibe, and just that alone, the energy here alone, aside from the resource, is awesome. So they send me to a pretty much mental health facility that you have to stay at for 24 hours, so they make sure that you are actually safe before they take you next door to the next place for you to stay there for 2 weeks. And so I was like, okay, cool, I'll stay here. I realized why I had to be there. There was some people in there that I had to pray for, and I did. So I get sent next door the next day because they realized that I was still, sane and everything was okay. At this point, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was stress. I don't know if it was pregnancy symptom. My eyes started to get so red and so they were burning and hurting. And it was just one of those things where I could not have sunglasses on. So they gave me 2 pairs of sunglasses and they were like, you can keep them, it's totally fine. And I literally had to wear sunglasses every day, and technically still do. I'm taking them off more often now. Before it was I never could take them off. Now I can go a few hours with them off and then I put them back on. But yeah, that's a thing now. So for the video, obviously they're off, but mostly people that are around me see me with sunglasses on. Fast forward, I'm there next door. I am okay, this is cool, fine. So I had to share a room with someone. We get to know each other and everything was cool. And in this place, you can you cook with each other, and one person makes dinner every night, and there's chores, and there's group meetings for you to talk about things. And I was like, okay, this is great. So I stood there for 3 weeks actually. They extended me for an extra week. And then by the end of that, they were like, well, we used to be able to extend it more, but now they're lifting it, so we can't do that anymore. Where are you gonna go? And I was like, where am I gonna go? So then luckily, people there and people from the hospital also connected me to this prenatal transitional place that you can stay at for the duration of your pregnancy and for some time afterward, and they help you get a place to live. And so I was like, wow, this is awesome. And so that is pretty much what's going on. Here we are. This is the real of it. That's where I'm at, and I am finally excited to say that I got an amazing job, that I'm on a housing list, and by the time, right before I'm gonna give birth, I will have a place to live, and I'm gonna have my home water birth, and miracles do happen. So please never give up. I said all this to say that. Please never give up. Please keep going. Please. Okay, before my phone dies, that's all. Just breathe. See you.